Do you ever watch your favorite team make decisions that leave you scratching your head and wondering if they're playing the same sport as everyone else? That's exactly what's happening with the Vancouver Canucks right now, and it's frankly terrifying for anyone who understands where the NHL is heading. While the rest of the league takes notes from the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup championships built on pure physicality and grit, the Canucks seem to be doing the exact opposite, and it might cost them everything. The writing is on the wall. In bold, intimidating letters, the NHL has shifted toward a more physical, in-your-face style of play, and teams that can't match that intensity are getting steamrolled in the playoffs. Yet here are the Canucks, systematically dismantling the very foundation of toughness that helped them compete at the highest level. It's like watching someone voluntarily walk into a heavyweight boxing match after spending months at yoga class instead of the gym. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say, the elephants that have already left the room. Since the start of the 2023-24 season, the Canucks have bid farewell to JT Miller, Nikita Zadorov, Ian Cole, Carson Soucy, Vasily Podkolzin, Noah Juulsen, and most recently, Dakota Joshua. That's not just a roster turnover, that's a systematic evacuation of physicality from a team that desperately needs it. Think about what they've lost in practical terms. Miller wasn't just a skilled forward. He was someone who could drop the gloves when necessary and never back down from confrontation. Zadorov was a legitimate intimidator on the blue line, the kind of player who made opposing forwards think twice before driving to the net. Joshua brought that rare combination of skill and sandpaper that playoff teams absolutely must have. What makes this exodus even more concerning is the apparent lack of urgency to replace what's been lost. While other teams are actively seeking out players who can bring that physical edge, the Canucks seem content to hope the remaining roster can somehow compensate for a massive deficit in toughness and intimidation. Here's where things get particularly interesting from a statistical perspective. The Canucks were the second most hitting team in the NHL during the 2024-25 season, delivering 2,213 hits, an impressive number that put them just behind the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. But here's the catch that should terrify Canucks fans. Kiefer Sherwood was responsible for 462 of those hits, which represents more than 1/5 of the team's total. Sherwood set a single-season record with those 462 hits, finishing 156 ahead of the next closest player league. While that's an incredible individual achievement, it also exposes a dangerous over-reliance on one player to provide the team's physical identity. What happens when Sherwood gets injured, suspended, or simply has an off night? The answer is becoming increasingly clear. The Canucks become a significantly softer team. The departure of Joshua 193 hits, Juulsen 101 hits, and Miller 92 hits removes 386 hits from their total, and there's no realistic way to replace that production. From their current roster, even with players like Evander Kane returning from injury and young players like Elias Pettersson getting more ice time, the mathematical reality is harsh. They're going to be significantly less physical than they were last season. Fighting might be a dying art in the NHL, but it's still a crucial component of team identity and protection. The Canucks fought only 19 times during the 2024-25 season, and they spread that responsibility across their entire roster, like some kind of democratic approach to violence. The first 9 fights of the season featured 9 different players, which sounds progressive until you realize it also means nobody was truly willing to be the team's enforcer. The committee approach worked to some extent last season, with JT Miller and Derek Forbort leading the team with 3 fights each. But losing Miller creates a significant void, not just in terms of raw fighting ability, but in terms of leadership and willingness to stand up for teammates when things get heated. Kane's addition helps address this concern somewhat. He's fought 5 times in the last 3 seasons, despite missing an entire year to injury, and more importantly, he's won most of those fights against legitimate tough guys like Andreas England, Brendan Dillon, and Brandon Duhaime. Kane brings what Joshua, and to a lesser extent Vincent Desharnais, provided, that nuclear deterrent factor that makes opponents think twice before taking liberties. This is where the Canucks might actually have improved, which provides some hope for their physical identity moving forward. The players they've lost, Joshua, Miller, and Juulsen, were more of the honest, straightforward physical type. They'd hit you hard and fight you if necessary, but they weren't necessarily the type to get under your skin and disrupt your mental game. Kane changes that dynamic entirely. He's built his career on irritating opponents and drawing penalties through intelligent agitation rather than cheap shots. Elias Pettersson on the blue line brings similar qualities, and together they should make the Canucks significantly more difficult to play against from a mental standpoint. The Canucks took the 6th most penalties in the NHL last season with 300, and all their most irritating players, Connor Garland, Sherwood, Aatu Artie, and Linus Karlsson, are still on the roster for 2025-26. There's also hope that Nils Haglander can return to the grittier style he displayed early in his career, when he was more willing to engage physically and get opponents off their game. Here's the harsh truth that Canucks management needs to confront. Playoff hockey is different from regular season hockey, and teams that can't match the physical intensity of postseason play consistently fall short of their goals. The Panthers didn't win back-to-back Stanley Cups because they were the most skilled team in the league. They won because they were the most willing to pay the physical price that championship hockey demands. The Canucks' current trajectory suggests they're building a team that might be perfectly adequate for regular season success, but could struggle mightily when the playoffs arrive, and the game inevitably becomes more physical. Without players who can deliver punishing hits, drop the gloves when necessary, and get under opponents' skin, they risk becoming victims of their own strategic miscalculation. What's most concerning about the Canucks' approach is how it might affect their overall team culture. Physical play isn't just about intimidation, it's about showing your teammates you're willing to sacrifice your body for the team's success. When players see their teammates delivering big hits, blocking shots, and standing up for each other, it creates a contagious effect that elevates everyone's compete level. By systematically removing physical players from their roster, the Canucks risk creating a culture where skill is valued over sacrifice, where players might be less willing to pay the physical price that winning hockey demands. This isn't about encouraging dirty play or unnecessary violence. It's about maintaining the kind of physical edge that championship teams require. The Canucks find themselves at a crossroads where they can either double down on their current approach or acknowledge that they've made a strategic error and work to correct it. With players like Kane providing some physical presence and younger players like Peterson showing potential for a more aggressive style, there's still time to address their physicality deficit. However, this will require a conscious effort to prioritize physical play in their remaining roster decisions. Every trade, every signing, and every call-up should be evaluated through the lens of whether it makes the team tougher to play against. The days of assuming skill alone will carry them through tough playoff series need to end. The NHL has shown its hand. Physical, aggressive teams are winning championships. The Canucks can either adapt to this reality or continue down a path that might lead to regular season success but postseason disappointment. The choice is theirs, but the consequences of getting it wrong could define their franchise for years to come. What's your take on the Canucks' approach to team building? Are they making a strategic mistake by moving away from physical play? Or do you think skill and speed can overcome toughness in today's NHL? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's debate whether Vancouver is building a contender or setting themselves up for another playoff disappointment. And don't forget to hit that like button if you're as concerned as we are about this franchise's direction.